AFTV Picks is giving away 5 PS5s. Not 1, not 2, but 5 PS5s. 5! All you got to do to enter is go onto AFTV Picks, answer the simple question, and one of these PS5s could be yours. You can enter by going online. You can even do it old school by sending it in by post. But make sure you get on it right now. We've got 5 of them to give away, so do it right now. You have to be over 18 to enter, but answer that simple question, and one of these 5 could be yours. So enter now. 5!
Hi guys, welcome back to AFTV. Welcome back to a very special edition of the Tactical Insight Show. We've got Graham back. It's so excited to have you back, and I'm really looking forward to going through what's been a topsy-turvy season, mainly bad than good, and obviously a season that's delivered no European football for the first time in 25 years, is it? Yeah. So we're going to break it down. It won't always be a pleasure to be going back through those numbers, but it is a pleasure to have you back, and it is a pleasure to talk about Arsenal in a way that we can actually start making sense of what went wrong. And some did go right, so it's worth talking about that. But welcome back. Thanks for coming. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great, mate. It's lovely to be back, James.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And obviously, we see the comment section all the time. They're always saying,
We've talked about this overnight, so I think we've got a really good show lined up today.
I think so too. We're going to be looking at the show in 2 parts, as you rightly addressed when we were planning all this, that there was a moment in the season in which things started to change, even though it still didn't get us to where we want to be. But let's start with that first part, really. We've got some numbers to go through. Should we start there?
Yeah. I think the point I want to make to start the show off is that basically we went into this season on the high of the FA Cup win, and then we immediately sort of won the Community Shield. He brought in some good signings on paper. Gabriel to add solidity to the back line. William, we weren't so sure about. And of course, Partey came much later. But going into that season, the spine looked slightly stronger.
It did.
And there was a lot of optimism around the club going into that season. And I think the way it unravelled was a major disappointment and a surprise.
Yeah.
I think what Arteta did in the first part of the season was, in return for defensive structure, the attacking woes in the team became apparent very quickly. And the team dived down the table very quickly. And we're going to look at that now, James, aren't we, in the first 14 games?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here it is. Here's the graphic. Talk us through it.
Right. So that was the first 14 games. And we only won 4 of those games. We did start, actually, with a couple of wins.
Yeah, we did. It was a decent start. 3 wins out of 4, a defeat at Anfield. But you can accept that. That happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think one thing Arteta wanted at the start of the season was a better defensive structure. And in moving towards that better defensive structure, it came at the expense of the attack. And the attacking woes, as I said, soon became apparent. We literally struggled to score goals. So in those first 14 games, the problem we had, I thought, was that we basically were just playing a system that was too rigid, too controlled, too overcoached. And we always knew he was going to bring a bit to the table from his Man City days, which we're going to talk about the way the structure of the team evolved in our attacking phase. But in that first 14 games, we just simply were not creative. We were not shooting a goal. I think in the first 14 games, we only were averaging something like 10.4.
I think we've got it here,
10.4 shots per game. And we've got 2 elite forwards, Lacazette and Aubameyang, and they were only shooting on average 3.4% per game. But we had no trouble getting the ball up the pitch, as that graphic shows there. 27% of the time we were in the final third. So we had no problem playing up from the back, moving it through the thirds, getting it up to the front players. It's just that when we got there, it just broke down, and we just were not shooting enough. And we were not creating at all. So that was the problem we had.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about wanting that defensive rigidity to a degree. I completely agree. You only had to look at the signings. He brought in Gabriel, which was surprising because we already had Saliba. He brought in Partey, and while I love Partey, I think everyone knew we needed a creator, especially if Ozil wasn't going to be available. Did it feel to you, because it did to me, that after the high of the FA Cup, he kind of thought, oh, well, this works, I might stick with it. Do you know what I mean? Maybe he thought he'd stumbled on something that was worth persisting with a little bit?
Yeah, I think he started the season at the 3-4-3 shape at Fulham. But as we're going to show in a moment in one of your graphics, the 3-4-3 and the 4-2-3-1, which he used on 12 of the first 14 games, is very much the same sort of shape.
Yeah.
That when we went into the attacking third, it became a 2-3-5. So basically, but it was the same sort of like style of build-up. I think the midfield was very similar. We had players with the same sort of qualities, whoever he played there, who basically were not creative.
Yeah.
So we were, and obviously at the start of the season, James, there was a lot of problems, I think, in the camp. There was a lot of players he wanted to sell on at the start of the season, he couldn't sell. So there was a lot of disharmony, you thought, in the camp.
Do you feel a bit sorry for Arteta on that? Because it's a really interesting point, and I get a lot of stick on the channel for sticking up for Arteta a bit too much. But I do always think that context is important, and whoever came in, it wasn't about just doing a job on the pitch. It was off it. It was Socrates isn't a part of the squad because you know what? There's a limit on how many you can have.
Yeah.
Ozil obviously was a bit of a problem, whether that was his fault or not. He ultimately was a problem that needed dealing with.
Yeah.
For a rookie manager, it's quite a task, isn't it, for his first job?
I think so. And you have to wonder why, in the grander scheme of things, whether you think it was right to appoint a rookie manager in the first place. But they did. But when you do that, you immediately put yourself in a position where he's going to be inexperienced and he's got a lot of things to do with. Remember, they did make him, he went from head coach to manager. They gave him more authority.
I know,
so they must have saw something in him at the start of the season.
Yeah. It kind of, when they did that, it screamed to me that obviously Edu was kind of doing this job for the first time. I've got to be honest, I mean, Vinay Venkatesham seems a lovely bloke, but I don't know where his kind of football knowledge really is or comes from or anything like that. Maybe they looked at Arteta, who, whether he's a good coach or not, he's a football man, and he's been around, you know, some of the elite football people, your Guardiolas, your Wengers. He's played for some great clubs. Maybe they just thought they wanted a man like that to have more authority and more say in the role. You know, I almost think they just felt they needed to give him as much control as possible because they trusted in his football knowledge.
I think so. Obviously, he came with the knowledge he gained from being at Man City under Pep. I think you saw the inexperience quite quickly on the pitch, that he was over-reliant on experienced players who weren't producing.
He signed
Willian, who did not suit Arsenal's style or build-up play at all, and he was over-reliant on him very early on. It took a long time to move him out of the team.
Yeah.
So his inexperience showed in trusting inexperienced players who weren't delivering from on the pitch. Those first 14 games, there's the formations, 6-3-4-3s. He played 6-4-2-3-1s. But basically, if you show that graphic now, where we're going to show the graphic of how the team evolves in build-up, you will see, in effect, that it is basically the same structure. This is a typical 3-4-3 formation that he played in 6 of those games. Obviously, the personnel might change, but I've just used this as an example. So if you look at that graphic, basically the key player here is Tierney.
Yeah.
He's playing at left centre-back, right? But the key really is to move him up high on the left-hand side. Now, once he moves up high to the left-hand side, James, Saka will move into the half space on the left.
Yeah.
The Bellerin will come up high on the right. And then you've got, like, William there in the half space. Now,
so Saka and Willian, you felt were operating those half spaces there.
Yeah.
Aubameyang getting beyond maybe?
Aubameyang comes more central, if you move him central. Now, so Lacazette drops deep, so Lacazette comes back. Aubameyang comes more central. And the idea here is that Lacazette, although you think he's playing at 10, is in fact playing as a second forward. So he will come deep. Early in the season, he was coming too deep, I thought, a lot of the time. But essentially, you want him to arrive into the box. So there's his the front shape of the team there. You're ready. Bellerin and Tierney high, Saka and Willian the half space, Aubameyang central, and Lacazette coming from deep. And then you've got Xhaka would sometimes flip over to the left to protect the space where Tierney comes from. That is basically the 3-4-3, becoming more or less very similar to Pep's 2-3-5.
Yeah.
So if you move now to the 4-2-3-1, you will see very similar build-up in this one as well. There's once again, Bellerin and Tierney are the two fullbacks going high. And then what you primarily got is William and Saka moving into the half spaces. Aubameyang is already central in that shape, but Lacazette is the one dropping deep again.
Yeah.
So what he had was a very predictable shape to the team. And teams quickly worked out that Arsenal were, they could be compact and stop us from creating and getting shots away. We were very slow in build-up, moving it through the thirds, but we got up the pitch all right.
Yeah.
But by then, teams have regrouped and obviously a lot of times recovered possession.
Yeah.
At the start of the season, we were pressing high, which left us vulnerable to counter-attack or long balls. But primarily, we lack a creative midfielder.
Yeah,
All our midfield players have got very similar qualities. Xhaka, Partey, whoever he played, Neni, Tobias. They're all very similar midfield players.
Yeah.
And the other problem you had is that Saka and Willian in those half spaces, there wasn't a lot of goals from those areas. And I think because he was overcoaching them, there was a lack of movement, a lack of players running with the ball. They stuck to their positions, and I think that's the fault of Arteta.
It's really fascinating. Sorry to cut you there, because the point that's really interesting is that ultimately, whatever formation he played, the ultimate look of the team and where they position themselves going forward is kind of always the same. Yeah. He had his base and he had that front five. And actually, when you go to the Emirates, I know you go a lot, and we've not been able to for the last year, but I remember going to Arteta's first home game in charge, Chelsea, and they were warming up with a front five and 2 feeders or maybe 3. But it's clearly something that he is dead set on. Whether he changes formations and whether he tinkers it here and there, ultimately, he believes there needs to almost be an attacking front five.
Absolutely. That is something that you learn under Pep. But if you look at Pep's team, they've got better quality players.
Yeah.
And also his front five, there's goals right across the front five.
Yeah.
And also there's creativity across the front five. So here I have like 2 wide players, say Mahrez or Sterling. He'll have 2 creators in the half spaces, De Bruyne or Gundogan, or Aguero or Jesus down the middle.
Yeah.
And the creativity comes from the half space, and the goals come from wide and also from the forward. So his front five, not only are they a better quality of player, there's more goals and creativity. Now, under his front five, Arteta's front five, we got 2 fullbacks who we wanted to go high, primarily to put crosses into the box.
Yeah.
He always used to talk about, we've got lots of crosses into the box, but we haven't got forwards who thrive on crosses, and Aubameyang and Lacazette.
Yeah.
And our players who we had in the half space, Willian and Saka, their XG for creation and goals, in that system, Saka got better when he got more freedom and he had Smith Rowe to combine with, but in that system, their XG creation was just not happening. So as a result, we had no creativity. That's why the shots at goal were so low. Only 10.4 shots per game in those first 14 games. We were simply not shooting a goal. And the forwards were not getting the ball where they could shoot a goal. And this is because of the way he overcoached it in this system. It was too rigid, too controlled, no freedom. And I think, that is something he brought from Manchester City. But Manchester City had more elite players and also had goals right across the front five, James.
It's a great point. You can rely on De Bruyne, on Silva, on Sterling to get you a goal. And actually, when Mahrez is pinned to the touchline, he's got the quality to beat his man or make something happen from those areas. And Pep probably enjoys it because his creative players, his flair players, have a bit of space. And actually, with our players, if the ball comes, Pepe's had a really good end to the season. Let's be honest about that. But Willian's had a poor year. Around this time that we're talking about, Pepe wasn't doing it either. And you felt that actually the only way we were going to win games was moments of magic. And I think there was just a hope that Aubameyang would just keep scoring. We defend well, Aubameyang keeps scoring, and we'll be fine. But obviously it didn't work out.
He obviously had a dip for the first time in his Arsenal career.
Yeah.
I don't think he was helped by this system. Aubameyang is a centre forward who has to play up the shoulder.
Yeah.
And we'll see later how we flipped to the 4-2-3-1. We was making more vertical runs off the shoulder of a defender, coming inside and getting on the end of through balls.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
he needs a number 10 to create those sort of openings for him. In this system, with the front five, it's too overcoached, doesn't suit Aubameyang, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why his numbers dropped. Yeah. And also Lacazette, we thought he was playing 10,
I know.
but he was just too deep. He was literally having to arrive in the box. He had a long way to run to get into the box.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So, and I just think that this system that he contrived just clearly was too overcoached and affected the players. He did not create a system that suited the players that we had in that first 14 games. That's why we were 14 points, 15th in the league. I think only Burnley, Sheffield and West Brom had less shots than us at goal in that period. And they're what you call defensive teams. We're Arsenal. We like to attack and play beautiful football, but under this system, he was handicapping us, you could say, in this structure.
I completely agree. And what we saw with that was obviously some really poor home results.
Yeah.
The home defeats to Leicester, Villa, Wolves and Burnley. I mean, I've got to say, this is shocking when you look back at it. You know, 1 goal scored.
Yeah.
We can't even say we went down fighting. 7 conceded. All right, Burnley might have been unfortunate because of the red card and the own goal, but ultimately, shocking, wasn't it?
It was just unbelievable, wasn't it? This was the lowest point of the season for me. These teams were coming to the Emirates and were basically not frightened of us.
No, they weren't.
And because they see our weakness, and they went for us. And these teams got these results, which put us in the position we were in. And it was looking at that stage. I think Arteta was looking under so much pressure at that stage that his position, if it carried on, would be untenable. He had to do something to change it.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And do you know the bit, and you use the word overcoach there?
Yeah.
The reason I love that word is because I don't think that no other word sums up what I saw in these games better. I remember the Leicester game, Villa we would just pour throughout, but Leicester, Wolves, Burnley, when we needed a goal, I remember watching the team and thinking, I don't even know where this is going to come from. Because you could see players, this is where I give a little bit of credit, I wouldn't say credit, but I feel sorry for Granit Xhaka. He was clearly doing what his managers asked. He gets the ball, he drops into the left-back space, he gets it, he's trying to move it on, he's trying to recycle possession, he's trying to keep it ticking. But you're screaming at the TV saying, do something, be inventive, express yourself. They're clearly just trying to follow the manager's instruction and walk it in. But the problem was that Arsenal for a long time have been criticised for trying to walk the ball in, but we had flair players, Cazorla, who made things happen. Yeah. And actually we lacked that in that first half of the season.
I think what he was really concerned about the positioning off the ball. And we have had issues with positioning off the ball a lot of the time. So he asked players to maintain their position. And I think that's one of the reasons. But that comes at the expense of the attacking side. I think the attacking side of the game, I think that he obviously wanted to press as well at the start. We were pressing a lot at the start, but that left us vulnerable to long balls and to counter-attacks. So I think the pressing quickly dropped off. But I think it was all about trying to improve the positioning to get the defensive structure right, because we haven't got in this team, we haven't got like elite athletes who can recover their positions quickly. Yeah. So I think he just wanted something robotic so that basically they always knew where their position was.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, maybe athletically we were lacking something. To press well, you're not always going to press well. Sometimes you need to recover, and actually,
we haven't got those sort of players. We got players who are not, and also we got players who on the ball are not press resistant, like Danny Ceballos. Yeah, he's not press resistant on the ball. So there's lots of. He's always trying to cover up for faults in the players he's got. So maybe you can cut him a bit of slack for that. Yeah, but it's just not good enough. An Arsenal manager presiding over this run at home. I can't ever.
He was very lucky to stay in the job, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah, he's very lucky. There weren't fans in the stadium, James.
He was, because what this doesn't show. We're focusing a lot on the league numbers, but also obviously the Southampton draw at home was incredibly disappointing. Knocked out the Carabao Cup by City 4-1. With nothing in it. These were incredibly disappointing moments, but there was a change. Believe it or not, we got a Christmas present. Unbelievably, it was our form after that Chelsea 3-1 win. And you've spotted a few kind of areas why that might have changed.
Yeah, I think that we reached Boxing Day, and I think it was more by accident than design. Okay. So he went into the game against Chelsea with 14 points out of 14 games, 15th in the table. And Willian, I think, was injured for that game. We had the senior players he'd been trusting weren't fit. I don't think Aubameyang was fit for that game or didn't play that game. So he literally had to turn to youth. Yes. He had no other choice, basically, to turn to youth. So in that game against Chelsea, in came Martinelli on the left side, and in came Smith Rowe into the number 10 position. And we changed formations to the 4-2-3-1. Saka came over onto the right-hand side. He played his 4 at the back. He played the pivot of El Neni and Xhaka. Xhaka scored a brilliant free kick in that game.
He was terrific in that game.
Yeah, and he was brilliant in that game. But we went back to getting things fundamentally right in the team, putting a structure in place, pillars in the right area. Football's all about creating pillars in your team, allowing your flair players to express themselves from a base.
I agree.
And getting players in positions where they're comfortable. All of a sudden, Smith Rowe at number 10 offered us something that had been missing, a player between the lines. And I know we're going to talk about Smith Rowe, because I think that he was the catalyst. This tactical switch, which happened by accident, I think, in my opinion, Arteta got lucky. He moved to the 4-2-3-1, I think was the trigger to the upturning results in the second half of the season that pushed us up the table. And I think Smith Rowe, he wasn't the player of the season. Saka, for me, was our player of the season. But I think Smith Rowe was the catalyst to the change in the way Arsenal played during that season.
I completely agree. And do you know what's fascinating? And I want to look at these numbers. I want to smile and say, great, that's something to build on. I know it's still 5 defeats. I know it's still points dropped in 10 games out of 24. But I'm seeing it's so much more encouraging. We've seen, everyone's seen on social media doing the rounds that this is Arsenal's form is the second best in the league since Christmas. Only City have better form. You know, you don't... Obviously, the bigger picture is, but we're 8th and we've not got European football. Yeah. It's just so disappointing. That autumn period, that sort of October, November and a bit of December was so bad.
It was so bad the season was done and dusted.
The season was done. And even if we just shown a degree of... Actually, if anything, we were too consistent because we were consistently losing. But even if we'd shown a degree of, you know what, that Burnley game, actually, we did grind a win out. You know, Wolves, well, we weren't really at it, we got a point. Just these little things. We finished 6 points off the top 4. That would have been 4 points extra there. And actually, maybe would have paid more attention to the league and not everything would have been on the Europa League. So it's so frustrating. But I do agree that it was the emergence of EMILE Smith-Rowe that really kick-started that. Obviously, we then brought in Odegaard in January. But let's have a little look.
I think that if you look at it after Boxing Day then, what happened was we started to create more chances with Smith-Rowe in the team. And I know you're going to show his heat map in a minute. And we're going to talk about Smith-Rowe as a player and what he offers to the team. But I think... what happened was, it doesn't sound a lot. We went up from 10.4 shots per game to 13, but I think that is a significant increase.
I agree.
But one of the reasons why that was is because he settled on this 4-2-3-1 formation 23 times in the last 24 games. That he went with the 4-2-3-1, only changed it to match up Chelsea when we won away at Chelsea.
That's a good point,
3-4-2-1. But primarily it was a 4-2-3-1 system. And I think the thing about Smith-Rowe is, for somebody of his age, he seems to understand what the game needs him to do. He's very good at sort of like getting into the half space. He can drift right, he can drift left. He can combine with Saka on the right, he can combine with Pepe on the left. He can sort of like enable Pepe to come inside and he can go out wide. And also the point you made, which is a really good point, he's able to sort of drift past people. He's quite deceptive with his pace.
Yeah, he is deceptively fast. He has little bursts.
You don't think that he's got the pace, but he runs with the ball and can run past players. And also he disrupts teams' formation. They're not so compact. And that opens up space for other players, and that's what you need. So with him in the team, I thought the team had more freedom, more energy, and better connections. Better connections across the front. And also Aubameyang could run off, spin off. And if you've got his heat map,
I do have it. Here we are. Yeah, this is against Brighton,
and this shows you that he's sort of like, he's a number 10, but look, he's drifting out wide a lot. And that just shows his quality. He understands what he needs to do in a game. And with him I think we're a better team. He makes players in our team look better. That's the biggest compliment I can pay him. Sorry, and I just think he was one of the reasons why we improved as a team. And it's amazing that a guy of that age can come in. And he had a history of injuries before he came in. And obviously the tactical switch we talked about, the loan signing of Odegaard and Partey then becoming more prominent as the season went on. Still a lot more to come from Partey.
Of course,
and also Pepe being reborn. I know you touched on Pepe yourself.
Yeah, I was delighted with what I started seeing from Pepe. I think part of that is, and Bellerin's had a lot of stick this season. But he wasn't at it, and actually the minute we started bringing Cedric in more, Chambers, you felt that there was someone Pepe seemed to trust a bit more behind him. I also wanted to, what's so interesting about Smith-Rowe and his development is, I think that changed it for Arteta. That started to win people on side a bit more. But you add to that Odegaard came in, Martinelli was fit. He obviously not been fit for that whole first 14 games. Pablo Mari came back fit. Partey started to find a bit of consistency in his fitness. That means Aubameyang and Lacazette were the two strikers. So Nketiah, who didn't look ready to me, wasn't playing as much. You just felt that there was a much better balance to the squad. I suddenly started to get a bit more excited about the starting 11s that I saw going out on match days.
Absolutely. I think that the fundamental change was that we went from playing Lacazette as a second forward, almost like a 10, coming a second forward. That position got filled by Smith-Rowe, and we played one of Lacazette or Aubameyang. So Lacazette stopped playing so deep. The second half of the season, He was still catalyst to the build-up play, but he wasn't playing so deep. He was bringing players into play higher up the pitch.
Yeah.
And then if Lacazette wasn't playing, Aubameyang played central, and then we looked to spin him in behind, or he made those different sort of runs that he was in the shape that he was playing early in the season. Have you got the Smith Rowe numbers there?
Yeah, we've got Emile Smith Rowe's numbers from the
36
season.
appearances, 26 starts, 10 sub-doms, 7 goals, 7 assists. He played in 4 positions, but I think there's more to come from him in goals.
Agree.
I do think there's more to come.
I think so too.
And he's always scored goals at every level he's played at. I think he's going to, as his Arsenal career develops, become a goal scorer. We've lacking that Aaron Ramsey third running midfielder who comes in with 9-10 goals. I think he could be that. But the interesting stat for me is that I would like you to sort of bear in mind today as we talk about Smith Rowe is when he's in Arsenal's team, our win percentage is 63. Look at that, 63%.
So this is pre-Brighton, which was obviously yesterday's game.
But without him in the team, it drops to 30%.
Do you know what? That is staggering.
Yeah.
That is genuinely staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and that I just think that is the biggest sort of tribute we can pay to the impact he's had this season. The numbers, show it there. We've shown the numbers since he's come in on Boxing Day, but also the eye test. You just watch and you see a better team. I think I agree with you. Saka's been my player of the season, and a word on Saka because obviously we've not gone into his numbers as much, but Saka was really clawing us out when we needed it. He was the only one in that bad spell that I thought looked like doing anything, quite frankly. But him and Smith Rowe, the youngsters, really led the line. So I've been absolutely, delighted with them. There was another. What are we going to show? We're going to show the numbers with Odegaard and. I've lost it. Sorry. Where was the stat? Yeah. Oh, I've not got it up. Well, we're basically talking about the impact of Odegaard, Saka, and Smith Rowe in that sort of 3 behind the striker.
I think there were periods in the season where he played Odegaard and Smith Rowe and Saka behind a striker. It was like 2 number 8s and another 10.
Yeah.
So although it was a 4-2-3-1, it veered to that sort of shape. I do think in the semi-final against Villarreal when he went 4-1-4-1, second leg, tactically that was wrong. I think he should have stuck with the 4-2-3-1, and the false 9 was a mistake. Well documented on the channel by yourself when we went out there, false 9. So he's still making tactical errors. I think his in-game management on the pitch for me is still a concern.
Yes, agreed.
But primarily, I think the improvement. He stumbled on something, in my opinion, more by accident than design. I think because he's so inexperienced as a manager, he was trusting the experienced players who weren't delivering. It needed these experienced players not to be available for him to think, do you know what, I'm going to have to go with the youngsters. Yeah. And I think this season has been a poor season by Arsenal standards, no European football, but it's a season where the youngsters came through. And I think that we've seen the development of these youngsters. And if we need to do something in the transfer market before the start of next season, we need to build around these young players, give them the support to be what they can be. Because I think people like Smith Rowe and Saka are quickly going to be growing bigger than this team if he doesn't.
I completely agree.
And I think that's what I take out of the season, the emergence of these young players. Obviously, he hasn't delivered European football, James.
Yeah.
But summing it all up, first part of the season, overcoached, structure too rigid, too controlled, no flair in the team, struggling to create, not shooting enough at goal. Suddenly we flip to the 4-2-3-1. Smith Rowe between the lines. He brings in Odegaard, who offers a dimension in certain games. And all of a sudden we're creating chances, shooting more at goal, and the upturn form's there to see.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is we talked about it, me and you off air, the difference between Smith Rowe and Odegaard. Odegaard, the Real Madrid player, I don't know if he's going to be here next season.
I fear he's not,
No, but I think out of the two, Smith Rowe is the... whereas Odegaard is more the conventional number 10.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Smith Rowe is somebody who basically can move around right across the front line.
Got more energy, a bit more drive about him. I like them both. I think there's room for both. I think sometimes you need, like against Brighton yesterday, you have both and it works nicely. They can complement each other. But I agree. I think the emergence of Smith Rowe, the addition of having a number 10, having proper strikers, a bit more balanced, something a bit more sensible, we start to see something better. We're not where we want to be, but it's definitely better. Graham, thank you so much for returning. It's been great, and thank you for breaking that down, because the numbers are fascinating. And you're so right, ultimately, whatever formation he goes for, Arteta's got principles there that he wants to build on. So, the Cronkies, I doubt they're watching, but if you are, back this guy. You know, I'm not saying he's the right man, I'm not saying he's the answer, but whoever comes in, back them, because they're trying to do something.
I think the thing is, I blame the Cronkies for where we are as a club.
Yeah, agreed.
But I blame Arteta for why we didn't get European football for next season.
Yeah, I think that's
and I think he'd be under enormous pressure. Start of next season to hit the ground running. You said it yourself, first 10 games. You want to be winning probably, what you said, 6, 7 of those games?
6, 7 of those. You want to be reasonable, yeah. 6, 7 of those.
And if he doesn't start well next season, bearing in mind, I think he'll have the opportunity in the summer now to trim the squad down because we're not got no European football next season. So he can trim that squad down. We can focus on the cups and on the league. But it's all about, I think, realistically for next season, James, we need to be back challenging for the top 4. Those clubs are a long way ahead of us, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United. It's very hard to see how we're going to break in. But if he's challenging and you see him progress, I think then as long as we're the process can still be trusted. I hate that word, process.
Yeah, I know.
But we can still trust it.
Does,
as long as he's challenging, he's got to be challenging for the top 4 next season.
I agree. I completely agree. I think that's a great way to round off. Graham, thank you for coming back.
Thanks,
guys, we're going to be doing a lot more of these shows as well. We're very excited now that everything's kind of calmed down in the world. Yeah, it's great to have you back. Thank you for joining, guys. Lots of content coming up, especially, I know the season's over, football's over, but we'll still be here. Don Robbie will obviously be covering everything on the Euros, and we'll be doing all sorts of end-of-season content, talking about who needs to go, who we bring in, what needs to happen this summer, all that. Also following this Daniel Ek stuff, what's going on there. So lots to talk about, as always, on AFTV. Subscribe, like, all that. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming back, Graham, and we'll see you soon.